What now, Dr. Morbius?
Prepare your minds for a new scale of physical scientific values, gentlemen.
The deeper a thing is, the more interesting.
Anti-gravity. Most physicists don't know the story.
We still don't know much more about this in the white world.
I've never heard of it.
The more I ask why,
it's probably classified physics.
It gets interesting.
The role of aerospace companies as holders of potentially basic scientific knowledge not shared with the academic world. Is it possible?
Maybe wrong, but it's true.
It's the bit of electrodynamics you're not allowed to know.
It is true. You believe it's true.
Yeah, I know it's true.
Disruption is coming.
Yes, thank you very much. Again, I've been reading Quinta Essentia Volume 1, and it's great. It's very, very readable. The history timeline is fantastic. And but I didn't realize that I should have really, what I was looking for was 2, 3, and 4. So I have further reading ahead of me. I've read your paper that came out this May. Not to say that I understand it. I'm not a scientist. I'm just a researcher and putting together stories. And it seems what your work is incredibly compelling. And you've got an incredible body of work, and it seems to line up with the truth that everybody's been finding. Vortexes and et cetera, and harmonies and the like. So that's just as kind of an introduction to why I'd like to speak with you. And I know that you've spoken on another interview about Bob Lazar and his craft. And so maybe we could talk a little bit about the quote UFO issue, and the technological connections to it. I also do have a few folks. What I usually do is through Twitter. It's basically got a platform that allows you to immediately host a podcast or a radio show, and people can come in as they will and ask questions. I'm going to see later on if anybody would like to. I had sent you some of their questions, and thank you for your responses in email. I might go over those a little bit later, but just want to get into maybe some new ground. Yeah. Oh, I'm in North Carolina, in the Appalachian Mountains here. Yeah, it's lovely. I mean, I was born and raised in this part of the world, and I've traveled around a bit, and will keep traveling. I expect to be going to Europe here in a couple of months to do more of this research. But yeah, you're in Australia, is that right? Please. Wait, no, I think that that's South Carolina there. The Carolinas always get confused. Yeah, but no, he's a yeah. Let's we can leave politics to the side, but I'm not smiling about it. Yeah, no, that's right. That's kind of in the neck of the woods. But yeah, any other interesting things? Again, I'm just someone who, this is a kind of a passion project. I've been following the science for about 2 years. I'm I did literature before, but then something cracked, and it seemed like there were advancements that had happened that weren't broadcast on television, and I thought they'd let me know. I've been going back over, it's over 100 years now, it seems. And I didn't realize Wilson was a precursor to Puthoff's PV model. That was news to me from reading your book. And I saw that he got involved with Rice University, which is connected to Los Alamos now. And so you can see a connection going back from 1921, and that's before Bostic and all the others with Teller. So
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So I would like to maybe just ask you a little bit about some of your work with the
sure.
And maybe we can leave getting into some of the other stuff that's a little bit more general later.
Yeah, sure. No worries.
But we had some of the interesting questions that were brought up when we were talking about beat frequencies, and that's come up time and time again, especially within. I mentioned to you that I'm into plasmoid research, and the modulation and control of all that seems to be fundamental. And I wonder what you might be able to say about beat frequencies.
Well, look, I mean, I've okay, where can I start? Look, it depends. The story of beat frequencies, or the discussions in that space, depends pretty much upon the application, I believe, that one is looking at. I do believe that there are modes, frequency modes, in different systems that can certainly enhance or reduce any desired effect. Whether that is a critical component for some form of propulsion, I don't know. I think it's a bit too early for that yet.
Well, I wondered, in your book, you mentioned that there were some tests that were done with this, not theory, but engineering method. And I wonder if you could talk about some of the things that allow this to really be a synthetic gravity, perhaps.
Well, I think probably a good example of that, or I suppose the most recent example of that I can provide, is the paper that I did on Lazar's work, his 7.46 hertz frequency claim. That is so back in 1989, apparently, Lazar made a claim. Bob Lazar made a frequency claim, that whilst the purported spacecraft, the sports model, was hovering at S4, the onboard gravity amplifiers, which produce what he called a gravity A wave, is pulsed at a frequency of 7.46 hertz, is what Bob claimed. Now, this was back in 1989. I couldn't find evidence of the claim in 1989. I think the earliest evidence of that claim specifically that I could find is 1993. So, look, it's so far back that 1989, as far as I'm concerned, it equals 1993. So his claim of 7.46 hertz is one that he made a very long time ago. Now, myself and Todd Desiato developed a technique that basically quantizes gravitational acceleration. So you can break it down into a set of sine waves with a Fourier distribution. So Joseph Fourier actually did the work 200 years ago, and all we did was utilize that 200-year-old methodology to the problem of gravitational acceleration at the surface of the Earth. Now, when I do that, so Todd and I developed the technique, and I think we published it in 2005 or 2007, I think, perhaps. So our technique has been out there for quite some time, but Bob made his claim in 1989. So Bob made his claim long before the method that Todd and I developed actually existed in the literature. And even then, the method is extremely complex, and it's very difficult to reproduce cold if you don't know what's going on. So I doubt whether Bob Lazar could have come up with it the same way that we did, or that I did. But anyway, the point being that I was able to show, using this technique, that 7.4 Bob's claim of 7.46 hertz was actually quite valid, and that actual frequency denotes an optimal solution for hovering at the surface of the Earth based upon what he talked about. Now, in relation to beat frequencies, I suppose what I'm getting to is that I was able to show that there is a key frequency, a key system frequency that does actually govern very significantly the behaviour of the system overall. So back to your question about beat frequencies specifically, as I mentioned previously, to me at least, beat frequencies is something that really is configurational system specific. So when we talk about beat frequencies, we need to look at the actual system that's generating the wave functions. So I can't be any more specific than that. I just tried to provide the Bob Lazar claim as an example of a significant frequency.
Yes, and I saw that interview on Bob Lazar. I thought it was interesting too, just as far as just as a researcher, if someone, it's like finding who told the joke first. If you can just go back and who said the right thing, right? That's true. So whenever someone said it, it was true then, and how did they get to it? And following that, he also said in an interview on a Coast to Coast with Stan Deyo that they got into a conversation, and I think Deyo was trying to test him a little bit, and Lazar said that, well, the fields we generated around these craft were toroidal. And then Deyo chimes in, oh, yeah, toroidal fields. That's what we generated too. So I think that seems to be along maybe going into your work again with this standing wave electron model. It's something that's come up time and time again. And de Broglie's influence on that. So yes, I know I'm throwing quite a lot out here, but there's it's just a very rich field.
Oh, look, no doubt. I mean, look, it's my personal view that, look, I'm, as you probably know, I'm an engineer. And engineers tend to look at things a little bit more realistically than physicists do. And unfortunately, we're living in a scientific world where general relativity is so indoctrinated that it's very difficult to overcome that mindset. And the problem with general relativity is that it doesn't allow you to do anything. Unless you can move planets around, you really can't do much. Yeah. And there's basically a large population of people out there, and they can be lay people, and they can be physicists. And if you ask the question, what is gravity? The answer that comes back to you is that it's space-time curvature. Okay, that's the answer. That's a standard GR answer. If Albert Einstein was here, he'd be telling you the same thing probably. Okay. Now, the issue with that is that space-time curvature describes the end result, describes how we map paths of light through space-time. It doesn't tell us why it actually occurs. And this is where the polarizable vacuum model of gravity becomes so helpful and so important, because according to the PV model of gravity, gravity arises not due to space-time curvature, that's a consequence, but gravity arises, the gravitational effect arises due to a change in energy density surrounding an object, so surrounding the Earth, for example. So as your elevation increases, as you go up towards the sky, there's a decrease in energy density, and it's the gradient in the energy density that is the result of gravity. So if you have, for example, if you could have magically somehow a volume of space, I don't know, the size of a solar system, and you had the power of God, and you were able to increase the energy density in that volume of space, by 1 billion, you won't feel any gravitational effects unless there is a change in energy density, a gradient, in any one or all three directions. You see? So the PV model of gravity, straight away, by recognising that gravity is a result, or gravity forms, if you like, because of a change in the energy density from point A to point B in a volume of space, right? That immediately means that I can start looking at it like an engineer. If I take the view that, if I take the Einsteinian view, that it's space-time curvature and that's what gravity is, well, then I can't do anything with it beyond move planets around. So being an engineer or having an engineering perspective significantly changes the way we look at problems. And what I think I'm seeing, just as a generalisation across the internet, is more engineering involvement, and that's why I think we have these movements, these collectives of people like yourself that believe in the possibility of interstellar propulsion and other kinds of things. Because if you take purely the standard doctrine, then we are stuck on this planet, certainly within the solar system, forever. And I just I can't
necessarily
accept.
like entropic also? Isn't it like it also it must be entropic only, and there's not really an extra creative energy to even get the order in the first place?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, correct. So, I mean, look, how you view the possibility of propulsion really comes down to how you view gravity. That's, in my opinion, it's as simple as that.
And since we haven't talked, I'm a real nerd on this. Okay, so I'm a true believer because Larry Reed is also talking about this optical interpretation or gravitation as a harmonic phenomena where you can engineer differentials between harmonic oscillators in his language, to have these kinds of things. I think that is what's going on with Bob Lazar. That would be the number that you would use to do this differential engineering, I think, or something like that, where you're playing with the fields that you're bound.
Yeah. Look, at a fundamental, at a high level, I'd say I don't disagree with you. I agree with you. But in the case of Bob Lazar, it's a little bit different. I mean, I've invested a lot of time and effort really doing a deep dive scientifically.
Yeah, please go on that. I was just generalizing. I'd like to hear more about that. Yeah, that's I was just generalizing and overstepped there into that category.
Yeah,
yeah, please.
Look, in the case, so let's talk about Bob Lazar's story specifically. Okay, now, as I mentioned before, with the 7.46 hertz, etc. Now that whole propulsion system is being driven by, at the very beginning, being driven by what he's called element 115. Okay, that's now named moscovium. So the entire propulsion system is designed around that one element, that one piece of hardware, and it's you can describe it. I mean, look, you're probably familiar with the story. You can describe it as a triangular piece of material, like copper coloured, right? Now, the question becomes, fundamentally, what is it about element 115 that, according to Bob Lazar, apparently suppresses gravity? Right? Now, look, I've spent a lot of time on this, and the explanation that I believe is the reason why element 115 produces the effect that it does is because I describe it as a quantum vacuum inhibitor. So basically, you can set it up so that it either enhances or negates the Casimir effect. So you can configure it so that you can produce either constructive interference with respect to the Casimir effect or destructive interference with respect to the Casimir effect. And it's, for example, what I'm getting to is by destructively interfering with the Casimir effect, so by switching off the Casimir effect at the surface of the Earth, what you're effectively doing is switching off your gradient in energy density. And if you're switching off your gradient in energy density, then you don't have a gravitational effect. You've got 0G, basically, right? So to put it another way, so the Casimir effect, or as you'd be aware, or I assume you're aware, throughout space, throughout the space-time manifold, throughout the surface of the Earth and everywhere else in space, you've got virtual particles being into and out of existence. Okay, now those virtual particles can generate what's called the Casimir force via a Casimir effect. So you might be aware of two neutrally charged plates, infinitely large, put very close together, say at the nanometer scale, will actually come together, and it will not be a gravitational effect. What's happening is the quantum vacuum pressure between the plates is lower than the quantum vacuum pressure outside the plates, so the outer universe is pushing those two plates together. That's the Casimir effect. It generates a force. It's called the Casimir force, and that has actually been experimentally verified, and people can look that up. Now, what I'm suggesting is that element 115 suppresses the spontaneous creation annihilation process from the quantum vacuum, and it's that process of virtual particle pair creation and annihilation that causes the gradient in the energy density, which subsequently generates a gravitational effect. Does that make sense? Can you follow me so far on that?
And yes, absolutely. And I'm happy to say that I have a few people here that are smarter than myself, but I'm not sure if you'll be able to hear them. So I wonder if you might be able to take another question. These are the people who sent you the questions originally, and I was asking on their behalf.
Sure.
So if you don't mind, let me go over to Jay here, and I think he might have a question for you, and let's see if he can be heard. Go ahead there.
Yes, thank you, Nathaniel, and thank you, Riccardo. Thank you for your time. Can you hear me? Everyone hear me?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, you're coming in loud, and very loud. Actually, I had to turn down the.
Oh, sorry about that.
That's all good.
You mentioned the Casimir effect. Is it suppressing the 0-point energy modes within the plates? I asked that because of the Garrett Model patent. I forget this other person, but his patent has suppressed Casimir cavities, which lowers the electron sub state. So is there a connection between that and what you're saying?
Yes, absolutely. I believe so. So my personal view, upon studying the Lazar story quite deeply for some time, is that the element he calls 115 does exactly that. Suppresses. It generates some kind of a wave function which is amplified, and that, I believe, suppresses the Casimir effect. So it suppresses the virtual particle pairs popping into and out of existence, right? Which sounds very similar to the device that you've just described. So if that device does the same thing, then I believe it's a potential parallel to it. Absolutely.
Great. So you're saying it's suppressing the 0-point modes within the plates. just to clarify.
Yes. Yeah, correct. So if you're using the actual Casimir effect as an example, yes, right? Because using Casimir effect and the Casimir plates as an example, so in between the plates, when they're very close together, the quantum vacuum pressure is lower than the quantum vacuum pressure outside the plates. Okay. Now, what that means is that if the quantum vacuum pressure is lower, the proximity of those two plates together is actually suppressing the creation and annihilation process of virtual particle pairs or wave functions that cannot fit between those plates, right? So there is suppression happening there, absolutely. It's a matter of how you choose to describe it. What I'm suggesting is that principle of suppression, in the case of Bob Lazar and element 115, that suppression is occurring due to the effects of element 115. So in both cases, in Casimir and in the Lazar case, I'm saying that it's a case of suppression in both examples, both situations.
Great, thank you. That's all I have for right now. Thank you.
Cheers.
All right, great. And I think we have another person up here that might have a question, but I'll wait for them to raise their hand. They have a little thing here anyway.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, yes, and indeed, there it is. I'm going to step back and let Hollow here ask a question of you, if you don't mind.
Yeah, Norris.
Riccardo, can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I can perfectly.
First of all, I would like to congratulate you for the paper that apparently I was late to the party on, but I was very pleased about the lore of Lazar paper, because I'd been talking about this connection between a photonic resonance and trying to find that. It was just inkling in the back of my mind that 7.46 hertz he had mentioned, and I'd never heard him say it again, and it for some reason was really bothering me. And I thought, considering, well, a lot of my studies were on the Schumann resonance, creating, basically a brain bandwidth entrainment interface, and it didn't seem like too big of a stretch to consider that. I don't know if you've read Dr. Grinberg's work, but he was the guy that disappeared in Mexico in '94, studying basically. Oh, it's a fascinating neuro-gravitational interface. A lot of his stuff was kind of obscure to most of the public, but he had several documents that were critically analyzing the neurological interface to the space-time metric, if you will, and looking at how these synaptic fields could cause an interface. And that led me to think eventually that the 7.46 had some kind of interface to this photonic resonator and a gravity local resonator. So there's so many questions that this brings up, like to go back to this gravity B hypothesis. Now, I know you're putting a fair amount of the effect on the element 115, and not that I disagree with that being a part of the novelty, but I do think the frequency itself may be perhaps more important than the element itself. And I'm not sure if you would agree with that, but I would like to just kind of open this up for a little bit of back and forth also to the significance of the exact. Now, I know you're talking about plates as per Casimir plates, but I also feel like we're also reflecting back to the Earth, and it has some kind of set of plates that are boundary conditions that represent that exact, say, standing wave that the 7.46 hertz is representing, right? Are we on the same page so far?
My personal view is that the frequency is as important as the supposed element 115, right? Now, what I showed in that Lazar paper was that, look, Bob Lazar spoke of gravity A and gravity B. So he spoke of two different forms of gravity. What I show is that there's actually only one form of gravity, right? So there's no A and B, there's just one form of gravity. But a single equation can describe both scales of reality. So from the quantum scale to the planetary scale. So I use the same equation to calculate that gravity B wave frequency of 7.46 hertz. I use the same mathematical construct to calculate the gravity A wave frequency that Bob speaks about, which is being generated by the element 115, right? The supposed element, the alleged element 115. Now, the reason 7.46 hertz is significant is because it is the Earth's gravitational frequency, if you like, that's responsible for greater than 99.9% of gravitational effect. Okay, so if you want to choose a higher frequency to interact with, you can do that, and you can get greater than a 99.9% cancellation, but you will require a lot more energy. I think it's something like 36 times more power amplifications required for a 0.04% increase above that 7.46 hertz frequency. So that 7.46 hertz frequency, you could almost think of it as a manner of explanation. You can think of it as a resonance mode. It's not, but it just helps convey the idea that frequency mode is actually important. So back to your point, my view is that the frequency mode is just as important as in Lazar's case, the element 115 itself.
Hollow,
So
are you
that,
there? Is your jaw dropped, or jump back in if you can? Oh, I think we might have. Sorry, can't hear you there, buddy. You know what to do. Come back around, leave and come back up. Cool. Great. So I'll have him back. That's just a little bit of technical stuff on my end. But yeah, this is all quite good. Now, did this spur you to? Is there a line of thinking that this makes you want to go down? I wouldn't want to interrupt you, but
yeah. Well, look, I have. Look, I've done a lot more work since then, and indeed a lot of work before then. One thing I want to point out, because I don't think a lot of people get this, or a lot of people have caught onto this, but I think it's really important. Now, that law of Lazar paper that I wrote in that 7.46 hertz frequency claim, which as far as I'm concerned, I've proven. What a lot of people don't realise is that the same mathematics that generates or that validates Lazar's claim actually generates a lot of other stuff as well. So, for example, that same mathematics, in 2008, I published a paper with the Australian Institute of Physics, and it was called The Natural Philosophy of the Cosmos, Part A. And that was published in 2008. And what was significant in there was that in 2008, I made a prediction for the power spectrum Hubble constant of 67.1 kilometres per second per megaparsec. Now, the Hubble constant is a measure of the rate of expansion of the universe. Okay, so in 2008, using basically, I'll call it Lazar mathematics, in 2008, using Lazar mathematics, right, I predicted a result of 67.1. Now, at the time, the official value listed in the particle data group was 73 kilometres per second per megaparsec. So I predicted 67.1, and the official figure was 73. Okay. Now, in 2013, 5 years later, right, a $900 million satellite called the Planck satellite embarked upon what's called the Planck mission, Planck satellite mission, And one of its parameters was to measure the Hubble constant. And it measured, so the official value at the time was 73 kilometers per second per megaparsec. So 73, just remember that number 73. This is 2013. The Planck satellite measured a value of 67.3. So in 2008, I predicted 67.1. In 2013, a $900 million satellite measured 67.3. Right? Now, that might not seem like a big deal to a lot of people, but ask any cosmologist about it. Right?
That's phenomenal.
One of the biggest problems in cosmology, that in a manner of speaking is breaking physics, is the Hubble constant, because it's measured two different ways. It's measured via the cosmic microwave background radiation, and it's also measured via what's called the distance ladder. So when we look at objects racing away from us, stars, etc., so on and so forth, and we make a measurement that way, it gives us one result, and when we measure the microwave background radiation, we get a different result. This is standard physics I'm talking about, right? Now, that difference is statistically significant. So the fact that I was able to predict in 2008 using Lazar mathematics a figure that was experimentally confirmed by a $900 million US dollar satellite in 2013 is no small thing. And at the same time, along with the Hubble constant, I actually predicted an improvement. I actually predicted an improvement to the value of the cosmic microwave background radiation temperature. So in 2008, the official figure was 2.725 Kelvin in 2008. 2008, I predicted 2.7248 Kelvin. And then in 2013, the Planck satellite improved the measurement by 1 order of magnitude, and it came up with 2.7255. So I predicted 2.7248. So my prediction was bang on accurate with what was actually measured as well in terms of temperature. So I'm stressing that this is all using what I'm calling, for the sake of your audience, Lazar mathematics. So it's the same mathematics that produces the 7.46 result, was experimentally confirmed 5 years in advance by a $900 million satellite. That is a big achievement, right? That's
incredible.
It is. So this is another reason why I'm so confident that Lazar was telling the truth, right? Now, in addition to that, some of your viewers, or perhaps yourself, might be aware, if you subscribe to my YouTube channel, I've got a whole bunch of videos that I've done on Lazar. In fact, there's a Lazar playlist, right? Now, I think the last video that I did on Lazar, what I did was I took that Law of Robert Lazar paper that I wrote, and I basically put it into two AI platforms, into ChatGPT and DeepSeek. In fact, DeepSeek R1 specifically. And I asked ChatGPT, I said, if you strip away all of the nonsense, all of the internet propaganda from the Bob Lazar story, what are you left with? And AI comes back, or ChatGPT comes back, and it says you're left with two things. You're left with that 7.46 hertz frequency claim, and you're left with the element 115 claim. Okay. I then put a condition on that. So straight away, I've just eliminated all of the noise that's on the internet regarding Bob Lazar, and I've precipitated the only two scientifically testable claims that he's made, right? I then confine that further to a situation where what can the average person on planet Earth actually verify for themselves about the Bob Lazar story? Now, when you do that, when you put that additional constraint on, what drops away is the element 115 claim, okay? So, because the average person doesn't have access to the equipment that you would need to verify one way or the other is element 115 claim. So people, for example, just have to believe that some accelerator in Moscow or wherever the experiment took place, some billion-dollar machine generated four atoms of element 115, and they broke down very quickly, right? So that's not something that the average person can actually verify for themselves. The average person has to take it on faith that this actually occurred. For all we know, it could all just be a lie, right? So when you actually tease out of the Bob Lazar story the artifacts that an average person can actually verify for themselves, what you're left with is that 7.46 hertz frequency claim. So if a person is prepared to learn the mathematics behind how it's derived, the average person can validate that claim for themselves. Okay. Now, I then took that, as I mentioned before, to AI, to DeepSeek, and to ChatGPT. And I put that information in there, and I asked both ChatGPT and DeepThink R1, starting from a very skeptical prior. So it started with the starting assumption that the Bob Lazar story, that the probability of the Bob Lazar story was true, a starting assumption of 1 in a trillion. So there's a 1 in a trillion possibility that the Lazar story, that the entire Lazar story is true. Okay, so this is what I instructed AI to begin with. Extremely skeptical. Basically, it's saying that the whole Lazar story is just rubbish. Anyway, I then got AI to analyze the whole situation, and I've done a video on this. And basically, at the end of the day, two AI platforms come back with the probability of the entire Lazar story being true of around 82%. So from an average person's point of view, there's an 82% expectation that they can have that the entire Lazar story is true, using key pieces of evidence like that 7.46 hertz frequency claim.
That's some fantastic detective work.
Yeah. So look, I did that. I did that quite a little. So when I utilized AI, I stepped back, right? I stepped back, and I said, look, you basically decide everything. To both AI platforms, I basically said this: you decide everything. Perform a certain number of Monte Carlo simulations. So at the end of the day, I think I'd have to go back and have a look, but I think I ran 1.2 million Monte Carlo simulations per AI platform. So there was a total of 2.4 million experiments that were done in order for AI to come back with the 82% probability that the entire Lazar story, not just the 7.46 hertz, but the entire Lazar story is true. So I treated it as a black box. I had no input, no manipulation, and I got AI to decide everything itself, which depends entirely on how it's programmed and its architecture, etc. So there was no there was literally no human involvement from me, other than setting up the basic framework. And viewers and listeners can find that all online. So if you go to my my YouTube channel and go to the last Lazar video that I've made, you can find the links to everything, including the mathematics that drives the whole thing.
Yeah, and that's a Quinta, Quinta Essentia,
Yeah.
part 5 at QE-5
correct,
for those want to follow and check it out. There's a lot of great playlists in there, and you really the work that you've done with these volumes, and I haven't even got to 2, 3, 4. It's such a synthesis. I mean, you really walk through the legacy of this from Pythagoras to, it's real well done. But seriously, but the Bob, not to go away from the Bob Lazar point here, because that's really incredible, and I would like to let's say that is true then, and then maybe go forward from there with some other things. We also do have Hollow Cipher back, who was asking a question and got dropped. I wonder if he's there, and maybe it picked up on all this with you a little bit better. Hollow, are you there? Check.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yep.
Yeah. Did you have something you wanted to add or mention, speaking to these claims and the numbers, et cetera, before you got cut off?
Well, I think if I'm hearing and following, which I am, his paper did address a slight discrepancy of the 7.43 at the surface area, or mean surface area. So it leads me to wonder whether the 7.46 represents an inner boundary layer within the Earth that acts like that discontinuity area that we might say could be the equivalent of the Earth's Casimir plates, as there perhaps a boundary condition there, or what is it unique about that we can pin to the Earth's geometry?
Yeah.
And does that also not indicate that every planet has a specifically tunable gravity according to its essentially geometric profile?
Okay, look, these are good questions. So I'm actually able to reproduce precisely the 7.46 hertz number rather than 7.43, just by using a different official value of the radius of the Earth. So what I used was one value that is contained in PD particle data group lists. There's actually also the official geographer's value. And if you use the official geographer's value, you get exactly 7.46 hertz. If you use the particle data group value, which is what I used, you get 7.43 hertz. So depending upon which official value of Earth radius you use, you either get my number or you get Bob's number. Exactly. So that's the first thing. Second thing, you're absolutely right. Every celestial body, every planet is going to have their own specific frequencies. And I think I actually from memory did a table of that in that paper. So there's the moon will have their own sweet spot, so to speak, their own frequency, and so will Mars and every other planet. Venus's frequency will be the basically the same as ours because it's the same mass. So yeah, you're right. Each body does have their own set of conditions, definitely.
Now, hopefully I can parlay off of this, but the idea of cosmological spin on large scales versus like more localized spin, do you account for spin effects as part of a coupling methodology at all?
No, not at all. Not at all. So as far as I'm concerned, as far as the EGM construct is concerned, because it deals with cosmology, so as far as the EGM construct is concerned, there is no net cosmological spin.
Yeah, I agree with you on the cosmological scale. As but as per more of a localized spin, there seems to be a coupling that other physicists like Ziotis has found to contribute actual inertia into, like, from the dark sector or vacuum. I know cosmologists like to not use vacuum and use the dark sector or dark matter energy domain, but there's definitely looks like a feedback as per this paper that shows the sun's radius actually pulsates in basically duty cycles that are coordinating with
Right.
these beat frequencies of the planets.
Look, it could be. I've never looked at those kinds of effects. But look, I mean, my work is at the end of the day, everything's an approximation. So quite possibly, considering these other contributions might increase accuracy. I can't say that it wouldn't.
But your feeling is that there's no spin function that actually can say phase cancel out the density pressure of ether or whatever you want to call it,
In my
or the vacuum.
No. In my opinion, no.
Well, maybe if I could parlay that off of that, Jake might have a question here in a second. But is there? It makes me wonder if there's some kind of corollary to spin. Whether chirality or opposite direction or something. But anyhow, I think that
Look,
yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not ruling it out. I'm not saying it doesn't have an effect, or rather, I'm not saying it can be excluded. All I'm saying is that I haven't considered it, and even though I haven't considered it, I've been able to achieve some, as we talked about before, some very significant matchups with experimental measurement. It doesn't mean I've got the answer to everything, because I don't, not by a long shot.
Yeah, no, certainly. Thank you. I think that a lot of our effort here is, just a passion project, working
Yeah.
people trying to do this. And so we're very often trying to put things to you that we found compelling to be like, what do you think about that? So, but let me go back over here to Jay, who might have a redirect on this.
Yeah, point of clarification from before, it was Bernard Hayes that was on that patent. So, and I do notice that he's in a paper that you talked about at 7.46. So
Oh,
the question for you is, go ahead. Go ahead, sorry.
no, you go.
Oh yeah. You mentioned in the paper the three gravity amplifiers, and you do speak about counterclockwise direction
Yeah.
with the three gravity. Can you go into why three and why counterclockwise in general, just for the audience and for the posterity of the space?
Yeah, sure. So according to Lazar, so this is where I've got to sort of really just trust Bob Lazar. According to Lazar, 3 gravity amplifiers were actually required for interstellar travel. If all you're trying to do at the surface of the Earth is hover, then strictly speaking, you only require one, right? One gravity amplifier pulsing at 7.46 hertz. But you wouldn't just have one, because if it fails, then you're going to crash. So you'd have a minimum of 2 when you're hovering. And this is also, I think, what Bob Lazar sort of said as well. But to have 3, he said the only time that 3 is really in use, or where it gets its greatest usage, is if you're looking to execute interstellar travel. So from my point of view, one single gravity amplifier would be enough to hover at the surface of the Earth if it's pulsing at 7.46 hertz. So it's generating a signal. So the gravity amplifier is taking the element 115 signal that's being generated, and it's 11.44 hertz or gigahertz signal. That's what the element 115 atom is naturally generating. That's the gravity A wave. That is then amplified. So it's an 11.44 gigahertz signal that's being amplified I can't remember how many million times, but it's being amplified, and then it's being burst released at the Earth at a frequency matching 7.46 hertz. So just to be clear, there's a continuous gravity A wave signal being generated by the element 115 atom that's being amplified, and it's then being burst released or pulse released at 7.46 hertz. So that's what's happening.
Great. Any follow up there, Jay, or put a hand up if others would like to?
Yeah,
we've
I
talked.
do.
Okay, yes, please, Jay. Thanks.
Oh yeah, so it's he also, I don't know if you've seen the videos. This is my follow-up landing question. He talks about, and he's on video where he does this pinch effect where if you combine the three in rotation and then you do a pinch, you rotate on the angle and you pinch.
Yeah,
Can you
yeah,
explain that? And then that'll be it for me. Thank you.
yeah. Okay. So look, that's a good question. I actually addressed that in one of my videos. I can't remember which one. So look, if you're really interested in Bob Lazar, I would suggest that, look, it's hard work, it's hard yakka, and it can be as boring as hell. It's pretty dry. I'm not the world's greatest entertainer, but I would strongly suggest, if you're interested in the Lazar story, get onto YouTube, watch my channel, look at the Bob Lazar playlist. In my opinion, it'd be worthwhile looking at all of the videos. But anyway, just you can confine yourself to the Bob Lazar playlist. Start from the beginning, work your way through, because each video is building up from the previous one. So there's a story there, right? You can jump to the end if you want to, but you may not necessarily get the full picture. So if you start right from the very beginning and go all the way through, you'll find that at one point, what I suggest regarding that interstellar travel. Now that's a good one. So in the Bob Lazar video, he gestures with his fingers, pointing to using them to gesture a focal point. Now the question is, what happens at that focal point? Look, what I think's happening, and this is what's covered in the video as well, I think that the gravity A wave signal from the element 115 atom is intensely amplified. It's then focused to a point. When it's focused to a point, the majority, the significant majority, if not all, of the Casimir effect is basically switched off totally, right? Now, what that means then, what I personally believe is happening, is that when it's switched off, if you're able to do that, then basically every line, every point in space from your focal point to another point in the universe that is at exactly the same potential as your focal point, basically that other point in the universe becomes co-located with your focal point. So it's not a wormhole, but you can think of it like a wormhole. So I believe what's happening is 2 points in space are basically being brought together to the same point, so that when the spacecraft actually crosses a threshold, it's traveling over virtually zero distance, but at almost infinite speed. But they're not traveling at infinite speed. They're crossing an almost dimensionless threshold, kind of like a wormhole, but it's not. Does that make sense?
It does. It's like distance is annihilated, like we've heard a couple months ago
Yes.
on TV with the
Yeah, correct. Yeah, correct. So exactly right. The distance between 2 points is annihilated. And the reason I've concluded that is this. Using the EGM construct, and I mentioned before about the Hubble constant and CMBR temperature, and I also derived the proton root mean square charge radius and the mean square charge radius of the neutron, all using the same framework, right? Now that framework also tells me, if I turn back the cosmological clock, that 14.57 billion years ago, not the 13.8 billion that the standard model of physics tells you, but 14.57 billion, that's called the Hubble age. So 14.57 billion years ago, the entire universe existed as I'll call a singularity particle, right? Now, at that instant, there was basically, there was no 0-point field, there was no Casimir effect. So every point in the universe was effectively co-located. Not literally, but effectively it was co-located, because the entire size of the universe then was about the size of an electron right now. Okay, so what I'm getting to is that this idea of co-locating 2 points, what I'm suggesting is that there is cosmological precedence for it. Right? There is cosmological precedence for it. The same way that there is cosmological precedence for the speed of light being much greater than what it is now, right? And I've shown this like lots of times. This is actually in the cosmological curves I've generated mathematically, etc. So immediately after the Big Bang, or whilst the Big Bang was occurring, the universe was experiencing a process called inflation. You might have heard cosmologists speak about inflation. Now, inflation was the exponential growth in the space-time manifold, right? Now, at that instant, the speed of light was like 10 to the 38 orders of magnitude. During that period, that inflationary period, I've calculated to be, it's like 10 to the 38 orders of magnitude greater than what the speed of light is now. So I'm saying that there's been a precedent for faster than light travel, a natural precedent for faster than light travel, and there's also been a natural precedent for co-locating 2 points in space. Get me? So this is how I'm able to justify in my mind the Lazar story and interstellar travel, and the suppression of the Casimir effect, which is what I keep coming back to. Does it make sense?
That's great. Thank you.
Cool.
Excellent. Yes, we have a new hand and a new question that might go along this vein. Get away here.
Yeah, sure.
Hi. I was curious your thoughts on scale invariance and macroscopic EVOs, aka macroscopic electrons.
Look, I don't have an opinion on macroscopic electrons. When you talk about scale invariance, what exactly do you mean by it?
Well, it's a physics term, right, for the thing that exists throughout all scales. What is the scale invariance of physics?
Okay, look, I'll answer that in a slightly different way. I'll answer it in terms of what's called gauge invariance. All right. Now, gauge, as the name suggests, it's like a gauge. Like, you know, you can think of a pressure gauge, an instrument that tells you some parameter, right? Pressure, length, whatever. Okay. Now, in physics, there's something that's called gauge invariance that relates to scale. The scale invariance. Now, gauge invariance, I just actually I wrote a research article on that you can probably find if you're interested. But bottom line, I deal with one of the fundamental aspects of the EGM construct is the idea of photons having mass. Okay. Now, if you ask a physicist about a photon having mass, they will tell you no, because it breaks gauge invariance. Right. Now, gauge invariance is very important in physics because it preserves charge, it preserves scale, it preserves a lot of things, right? Okay. Now, the thing is, within the EGM construct, within my model, I have massive photons, and those massive photons are very, very important for the Lazar mathematics that I talked about before. Okay. Now, what I found, and in that paper, what I've argued, and I used AI to determine this. I used 4 AI platforms to determine this. I can circumvent a gauge invariance problem or any potential scale invariance problem, right, by giving photons mass at the outset, saying that photons have mass, they have an innate mass, and by doing so, that avoids the invariance problem, and it avoids the invariance problem because in standard physics, what happens is you start off, standard physics starts off with a massless photon. Then if you give it mass, you've got all kinds of invariance problems, right? So the answer to your question is, what do I think about scale invariance? My answer is not much. I avoid it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I kind of see it as the opposite of the gauge invariance, whereas the gauge is always trying to measure the thing. I try to think of like, what is the universal hard drive that all things are backed up and stored on, and what's the thing that is scale invariant through all things that is pointing to the point of the matter.
Yeah, look, just on that, just if I had to look, now that I've heard your thoughts, the backup analogy, you've got me thinking. Look, in my opinion, what you could classify as your backup hard drive, right, is what I call look, the short terminology is quantum vacuum, but I actually call it the dark reservoir of quantum potential energy, right? So basically what I'm saying is, according to my construct, all matter in the universe is actually evaporating, okay? And it's evaporating into the 0-point field, right? It's evaporating into the quantum vacuum. So all information about us, the hard drive that's receiving all of this information in a jumbled state, is basically the quantum vacuum. So using your backup analogy, I would say that the answer is the quantum vacuum. What do you think? Does that make sense?
I'm 100% in agreement with you. I say that thing goes by many different names: ether, quantum vacuum, cosmic microwave background, whatever you want to call it. It's the momentum transfer, the coupling from that to mass itself that is extremely important, right? I was going to ask your thoughts on UFOs and bees. I had the idea, thought it was maybe original that bees are UFOs, but turns out China also has that idea. May 18th of this year, they wrote a paper, "The Role of Non-Metricity on Neutrino Behavior in Bumblebee Gravity." It's pretty wild.
It's certainly got an interesting title. I'm not familiar with it. But on the topic of UFOs, look, I would suggest I'd encourage you. I did a video It's on my channel. I think it's number 65. I think. I can't remember. Anyway, the title of it is UFO Propaganda, right? And I look at those Tic Tac videos, right? Now, I worked for a professional lifetime in quality assurance, hardware and software, right? In all kinds of hardware and all kinds of software. And in this video, I explain how, quite honestly, these Tic Tac videos that you see could very easily just be screen captures caught during the software testing process for some bit of military hardware. I don't know, it could be a flight system or something. So I'd encourage you to have a look at that, because personally, the only UFO story that I believe in any way, shape, or form is Bob Lazar, to be quite frank.
This
I
is
just
great.
don't believe anything else.
Yeah, maybe this is a great segue. I think that you opened up the door to it a little bit here, because in my view, like, look, I would love there to be aliens that don't want us to go to war, you know, and are zapping military installations. But I've come to believe that much more is possible that we're capable of technologically, that's been Invention Secrecy Act, DOE'd, you know, classified. And what we're capable of as far as a Tic Tac or a TR3B or some kind of saucer, as even in the 50s. The Magenta crash in 33, in my view, could be explained by charge resonance on a plate that lands, and that's a crash of a saucer, and they pick it up. And that's, you know, the beginning of a, you know, that's after World War I, and the aerospace in Italy as well. You also have the Vatican Church over there, you know, a pre-CIA OSS or intelligence network that later gets folded in. You know, Operation Gladio and all these things show the connections between the intelligence services, which got formed after World War II by Capital, Brown Brothers Harriman, etc. These robber barons were propulsion magnates as well. They were working on planes, they were working on railroads before that, they were working on ships before that, primarily to move cotton, but then later on it just grew. So there's a mechanism there for funding. Yamashita's gold proves, you know, you don't need taxes for it. And, you know, it seems like things, now, were you a colleague? Did you ever meet in person with Hal Puthoff?
No, I never met Hal in person, but I've known Hal for decades now. So Hal's very aware of my work, because my work is based upon his work. In fact, Todd Desiato and I actually took Hal's work much farther than he ever took it. Right, much farther.
Yeah,
so
Todd Desiato, his work also recommended to folks. He really advances the model.
Yeah, and look, Todd's an extremely clever guy. Look, without a doubt, he's got to be the best electrical engineer I've ever come across in my life, and I've met quite a few. Very, very clever guy. Now, Todd and I took Puthoff's work, quite frankly, to a completely new level. And Hal actually, when I released that law of Robert Lazar paper, shortly after, a few days after, I got a message from Hal saying I'm reading it with interest.
Wow.
Now, that look, Hal is, I mean, he's got the loving name of Black Hole Hal, because like stuff just falls into him, and it never sees it never comes out again. So Hal is look, he's probably very, very busy. So if you get any interaction from Hal, it's a win.
Yeah,
right? But I've known Hal for decades. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess you know, I don't want to. I mean, it seems like he's a kind of a guy in the know, right? I mean, I don't want to spoil anything here. You know, we didn't come up with questions beforehand, but I mean, you know.
Yeah. Look. What Hal? I saw the last interview he did. Was it with Joe Rogan? Who was it with?
Yes, Joe Rogan. Before that, Jesse Michaels was the one that broke it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so I watched the Joe Rogan interview because someone told me to watch it. Now, look, to be honest, I mean, I don't know, how much Hal does or does or doesn't know in terms of stuff in that space. But look, to me, as I've mentioned before, look, the only extraterrestrial story that I believe is Bob Lazar, and the reason I believe it is because I was able to verify that 7.46 hertz frequency claim myself. That's the only reason.
And so it seems like you would hold that there is a true capacity for these sciences to be more advanced, and that
Oh,
would
absolutely.
explain.
Look,
so you're bringing up the Tic Tac. I was
even
kind
beyond,
of,
even beyond that, I just wanted to throw this in. Even beyond that, I personally think that there is a level of conspiracy that's happening, and I'll explain it to you. Now, right throughout academia, physics, general relativity is taught as if it is the beginning and end all of everything regarding gravity. And quite frankly, it's not. It's not by a long shot. Let me explain what I mean. Now, the real power in general relativity isn't the theory itself. The real power is the mathematics underpinning the theory. And Einstein didn't do it himself. He had lots of help, professional help, right? Now, the same mathematics that's used in general relativity, it's also used in structural mechanics, fluid mechanics, right? It's all used. It's used there as well. Tensors are used everywhere, right? So that's the biggest breakthrough, in my opinion, with regards to the whole general relativity story. It's the mathematics underpinning the story. If you remove the mathematics from general relativity, you're not left with much, right? And it was general relativity was only about 10 years old when quantum mechanics came along and basically proved that general relativity was basically barking up the wrong tree. It works because of the mathematics, but that's not because of the theory, but because of the mathematics. That's why it works. And quantum mechanics came along and basically demonstrated that GR was barking up the wrong tree, right? Now, the question is, well, why has GR, even today in 2025, why is it so pervasive, and why is saying anything, any view that's not the strict GR view, why is that, taboo? Well, you've got to ask yourself the question: if you were some kind of government body and you had access to alien technology, right? And that alien technology, even just with the fact of levitation, right? Levitating means that you've basically broken GR, right? You've broken it. Just by being able to levitate a spacecraft, you've broken our understanding of GR and the way the universe works, okay? Now, if you're a government, and I'm not saying it's the US government, it could be any government, right? If you were a government and you had access to alien technology that basically breaks GR, and you want to make sure that people, because people are pretty clever, you want to make sure that people don't find ways to compete with the technology that you have. The story that you would tell would be a GR story, because according to GR, you can't do anything, right? You can't fly around. You can't do anything according to GR, right? So if you were a government and you wanted to keep the alien technology capability especially secret over the long term, well, in my view, you'd be convincing your army of global physicists not to look at alternatives. You'd be convincing them to look at the only truism, which is GR, wouldn't you? it's a way of keeping your population ignorant, don't you think?
Yes. Well, to that point, you know, again, taking the alien question here, doesn't it seem possible that okay, for example, I have a kind of a maxim I've come up with, which is de Glock, right? If de Glock, then not Roswell, because there shouldn't be within 10 years alien technology matching human technological innovation, unless we're saying that de Glock was a found alien technology too. It seems like there's actually just been understanding in science that's been covered up, and it's just secreted science. It's not perhaps exotic, you know, materials, because there seems to be a legacy of how to get to levitation in the literature.
Look, what you're saying could very well be true, but look, as I said before, the only impressive story, I won't even call it a UFO story, but the only impressive story that I believe, that I accept, is the story of Lazar, and that's only because I'm able to verify some of it myself. Now, I really don't know anything about any other UFO claims or stories, simply because, as far as I know, there is no testable science to it, right? I mean,
what about
if
de
you
Glock?
take...
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
Oh, de Glock is, I thought that would be a matter of, you know, empiricism, because of their counter rotation claims and the methodology there. It seems like that would generate lift, or
Yeah.
no, but maybe not. I don't know better, you know, or
Yeah.
I don't know if you've looked into it.
Look, I don't know the example. I don't know the story, but to be honest, but look, pretty much, I don't accept anything that I cannot prove myself mathematically. Right?
Yeah.
Look, I know that probably, I don't know, that probably doesn't sit well with some people, but that's just how I'm built. I mean, if I can't prove it for myself, then I can't trust it. I mean, for God's sake, I mean, if you just look at geopolitics over the last 3 years, I mean, we've been told so many lies. You know, it's quite, honestly, if you can't prove something for yourself, whatever it is, then you're probably being told a lie, don't you think?
Yeah, well, with the suppression issue, it's a little bit worse than just you know, not being able to have things get out there and being suppressed, because the people that could tell you better end up being nixed. It seems in the free energy, if you believe, you know, that that line of suppression, which we haven't talked about, but I guess I would get to as some of these larger claims. We talked about teleportation or faster than light travel. We also talked about levitation. I would bring up transmutation and quote free energy or linear or cold fusion, and all of those seem to be properties demonstrable in the literature for plasma physics. What plasmoids are capable of can do all of those things. It seems. I wonder what.
Yeah, look, just on the topic of free energy, I couldn't run past that, right? Look, in my view, there's no such thing. Look, the research that I've done, the mathematics that I've actually derived and run through, demonstrate that to get work, for example, out of the 0-point field, it can be done, right? It can be done, right? To get work out of the 0-point field. But to get a large amount of work, you require, like, the volume of space that contains enough, shall we say, industrial application, you know, scales of energy, it's on the astronomical scale. There is nothing that any human being can do at a human scale that can extract a significant amount of so-called free energy from the quantum vacuum.
So have you not, have you ever, in your mind then, there's no over unity quote or coefficient of performances that have ever reached one, right?
Correct. No,
yes.
It's just it's never happened, because, put it this way, look, it depends. Look, I've spent 30 years developing a mathematical model, a construct that matches some very important stuff, like experimentally, exactly, right? Now, over unity would break all of that. And I just can't see how it's possible. I've actually run the numbers myself. I've actually done the calculations myself. And yes, you can extract energy from the 0-point field, but at a human scale, you can't really get much. The most that you can get at a human scale, look, if you had the technology to make nanoscale pumps, right? So little pumps or parts that move on the nanoscale. Yes, you can run those. You can run those on 0-point field energy. Yes, if they're configured correctly. Yes, but they produce almost next to no work, right? If you want to get work out of the vacuum to run a city, then you literally need something the size of a galaxy. You need a volume of space the size of a galaxy. Literally. Right?
Well, yes. I think that I'm under the belief that the COP has been achieved. I would point to a public-facing company, ENG8, out of Portugal. ENG8 or ING8.
Okay.
They have a cell there, and they have it seems like they've demonstrated over unity, and I think that the exception to it is tapping the vacuum fluctuations is this the capability of what plasma is capable of and holding an immense amount of charge relatively.
Look, I don't know. I haven't looked at it, right? And I've noted it down. I will take a look at it, but I just can't believe. Look, if they have look, if they've done something, then my view is whatever they've done does not involve extracting a significant amount of energy from the vacuum. It is theoretical. It is possible to extract energy, absolutely. As I said, nanoscale devices, absolutely. Casimir plates, yes, absolutely. But if it's a useful amount of energy, then something else is happening. If they're actually producing it, then something else is happening. I don't know whether it's chemical or what, but I'll have to have a look at it.
Sure. And again, I'm just pushing, the thing of interest, but I actually, I think I could stand on this, and it might actually, I'm hoping that it's a great gift and that it's true and that you can run with this and it'll, be transformative. But I wanted to point to another person who I think is advanced, the PV model, also has a foundation on the Planck Aether hypothesis of Winterberg that I'm not sure if you follow there or ascribe to, but I think these are all formalisms for this, a large, and this is the abstract to a paper that came out at about the same time as yours in May from Larry Reed. Have you heard of Larry Reed at Lockheed Martin?
Yeah, Larry. I actually kind of know Larry. Yeah, Larry's bought basically all of my books. So yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I knew it. I mean, because what you're saying the same things, okay. Well, if I could just read this one paragraph from his new paper that came out in May. I mean, maybe this would, since you know him, and you could bring this up. The person that I'm advocating the ideas of just in research is the greatest I've found so far in this is Bob Greenyer, who has expanded this work. Bob Greenyer, Greenyer. On YouTube, it's the Martin Fleischmann, Fleisch, man, Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project. Are you familiar with Bob Greenyer?
I'm familiar with Fleischmann.
Okay, yes. So Bob Greenyer is continuing the work of Pons and Fleischmann and Dubovik and Shishkin and Matsumoto in Japan. These are people that have passed at this point, but he's the live edge for their research continuing. And Larry Reed has become interested in Bob Greenyer. Bob Greenyer's model revolves around fractal toroidal geometry, which are rings and rings and rings, and the ability to, as a electron, in my view, is a standing wave, defined by the precessional. I'm just borrowing from Larry Reed at this point, but the angle of the precession in the 1/137th is the So anyway, that's back to the mass on the on things. But this is what Larry Reed wrote here. The observable universe is characterized by a degenerate binary state of opposite pairings. The evolution of the universe from a true vacuum null state into a dyadic state may be described in terms of catastrophic theory or catastrophe theory and surreal number set theory. I'm going to skip ahead here to the point. Hence, it may be possible to induce a phase shift to locally flatten the vacuum, forming a true vacuum bubble, enabling faster than light FTL travel, in which a vehicle positioned just outside the collapse region is propelled by vacuum degeneracy pressure. The same mechanism observed in electronuclear collapse in low energy nuclear reactions, or LENR, or old cold fusion, involving three-level toroidal rings of charge clusters, may potentially serve as a technological means to achieve superluminal motion of matter without exorbitant energy input.
Yeah. So, look, I would agree with Larry, but I would put, I'd add one extra layer, one extra dimension to it, so to speak. Okay. What I've found recently, and I wrote an article, I wrote a paper on this, and it's called The Many Orders of Magnitude Problem. So if you go on ResearchGate and you go to my page there, you can find The Many Orders of Magnitude Problem. Now, just to tell you what the many orders of magnitude problem is. So there's a fundamental problem in physics, which is, why is the electrostatic force so much greater than the gravitational force? And in the case of the electron, it's 42 orders of magnitude greater. Okay, so why is the electric force, the electrostatic force, 42 orders of magnitude greater than the gravitational force that a couple of electrons would generate, or an electron would generate? So that's called the many orders of magnitude problem. And in that paper, what I actually do is present the solution to that problem, why it occurs. And what I found is that the reason it occurs is because there's a 90-degree phase shift, phase difference between the electrostatic force and the gravitational force with respect to the quantum vacuum. Okay, so the quantum vacuum, say in the case of an electron, it sees the electrostatic force of an electron being 90 degrees out of phase with the gravitational force. This is from the perspective of the quantum vacuum. So back to what Larry was saying about the phase shifting, I would agree with that. The caveat that I would put on is that phase shift needs to be 90 degrees, and I cannot begin to imagine how you can align, because this is what you'd need to do. The phase shift would need to align gravity with electromagnetism, right? How on earth you do that, I have no idea, and I can't see.
Well,
I can't see in my,
sorry.
I can't see in my mind's eye how a series of toroidal rings will achieve that.
Yes, I highly recommend, for that reason, Bob Greenyer. He explains it very well. Basically, you're creating a boundary condition in a topological monopole And the structures of the rings creating current loops, just like a soliton of a smoke ring begins the first. That's the beginning of toroidal fractal toroids, is a 2-order structure there, which establishes the smoke ring. Beyond that, you can have a 3-order structure, and then a 4-order structure, and then you can have substructures begin to form in there. And there's actually a beautiful geometry that goes in line with, I believe, your work. That defines the complexity of the densities and the sizes, and the smallness can give you a lot of charge inside of that. And but anyhow, I'll leave this to rest because I really do think that you will fall in love with the work of Bob Greenyer. It's the only recommendation I'll give, since you know Larry Reed.
I'll take a look at that, I think. Look, I'm going to have to make tracks at the moment. I'm going to have to get going.
Oh, thank you though for your time. Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, yeah. Look, it's been a pleasure talking to you and the people in your audience. So if anybody's out there and you want to reach out to me about something, please do. I've got a bit of an illness, so I'm retired. So I've got plenty of time on my hands. So yeah, you can reach out to me anytime you like, and it'll be all good.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, and I wish you the best health. And just again, your work is greatly appreciated. And it's a new find for me. I didn't realize quite how much great work that you have to go through. So I got that to look forward to. Thank you.
All right, no worries. Well, look, thanks for that, and look, hopefully we can catch up again soon.
I would like that. Thank you. I'm glad you said so. It was a pleasure to speak with you, and yeah, you seem like a real guy, and it's awesome. Thank you very much. I know everybody else is really enjoying it, and I'm seeing some thumbs up and stuff like that from the side of this. So applauses or whatever. People are clapping. Just imagine it.
Good stuff. Good stuff. All right, matey. I'll get going, and we'll catch up again soon.
Yeah, that'd be great. Take care. Thank you, Rick.
Cheers, matey. Bye. Bye.
As above, so below, the human being finds himself or herself in the middle. There is as much space outside the human, proportionately, as inside. Stars, moons, and planets remind us of protons, neutrons, and electrons. Is there a bigger being walking with all the stars within? Does our thinking affect what goes on outside us and what goes on inside us? I think it does.
This is a donut.
Is it a symbol for something else?